What's the trend of American business in China now? Are they leaving or are they coming? Can you share some data to us?
What I can tell you is that I keep hearing this notion that American companies are leaving China or that American companies are de-emphasizing China. What I can tell you is the data tells us that that is absolutely not true. What we're seeing, in fact, is we're seeing certain sectors that we're continuing to see investment, and we're seeing sort of a deepening of partnerships. I'll tell you something I think it's really interesting, and that is I still hear people tell me that American companies are in China for the market. Maybe that's sort of true, but that misses the real story of US-China commercial relations. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, companies might have been here for the market, but now they're here because here is where they work with their Chinese partners on innovation, where they work on development, where they refine business models, where they hone efficiency. They're here for supply chain, they're here for human resources. There's a lot of reasons for American companies to be here in China besides just the market.
There's a growing discussion in Washington is about the China shock 2.0, and they are talking about the Chinese dominance in manufacture may harm the interests of the US. How do you see this?
Everyone is concerned about the impact of say, Chinese overcapacity and deflation on their industries. And there are certain sectors that this is very profound. But I think that really the whole China shock 2.0 is a bit far from me because that's really more of an issue we're seeing in Europe. So I don't think the China shock is the most effective way to talk about it. What we see right now is not the threat of China shock in the United States, what we see as unnecessary, unplanned decoupling, and we think the risk of that is far greater right now than the potential for China shock. So I think we're looking for ways to deepen engagement and to make sure the two countries and the two economic systems can cooperate and work together better. And so really the choice is how do you leverage that in both countries for the best sort of growth opportunities, for the best employment opportunities, for the most rapid innovation. That's the real challenge we need to work on. And I think that's what you will see. The reason you see so many American CEOs and multinationals here is because that's the real question and the real challenge, is making the two sides work together efficiently, of course, with guardrails, but that's really what people are thinking about, not China shock 2.0, not some of those downside risks.
And talking about the competition, one of the most fierce area of competition, I think, is AI.
Yeah.
And many people, when I go to the US, they say we should win China. How do you define the winner?
Yeah,
here.
But that's the great question. How do you define the winner? I think a couple of things. The first thing I think is the US and China are competing for different things in AI. I mean, it's not to say they're not competing in all areas, but I think I hear on the dominant side on the US in particular, and on the government, it's the race for AGI, the race for developing the most frontier, the most advanced AI model. And what I see on China, because of course, China is interested in that as well, but where I see China excelling is in the application of AI. How do you apply AI to making manufacturing more efficient? How do you put it into new materials development and drug discovery? And so I see China is running the race for application of AI. And I see on the US, at least for the focus of the government, is the focus on developing the frontier technologies. So I think there's a different kind of race the two sides are running. They're all working on all areas, but I think you've probably heard this more than most Americans have. But, every time I hear it's this race in AI between the United States and China, I always laugh because as you know, and as I know, really it's not a race between the US and China. Largely, it's a race between Chinese researchers and developers in China racing against Chinese researchers and developers in America with others. I mean, not to overstate it, but so I think that there's just a lot of excess concern about who's winning. And really the focus should be on not just how do we win, but how do we put it to use in a way that's going to improve people's livelihoods, that's going to improve income, and it's going to improve efficiency. So I think all of those elements are important.
You come to China, and how do you see the recent technological development here in China?
I think one of the most fundamental problems we have between the United States and China is that not enough American policymakers, not enough American legislators, not enough Americans have been to China in the last couple of years. So what happens is people who came to China in the 90s or in the early 2000s or in the teens, they all have a snapshot of what China is. And maybe for that time period, it was right. But the China of today, the China of 2026, is more competitive, it's more innovative, it's more efficient, it's more beautiful, the air is better. It's not the same China as 5 years ago. So every time I go, what I think is I wish we could get more American officials to see this and understand, more American people, more American legislators, and that would go a long way, I think, to helping ease some of the concerns that people have about China. So we just came from the discussion or the speech by Premier Li Qiang, great speech, and he pointed out something that I've been telling American officials and American companies, actually two things. The first is China's optimization of supply chains has been utterly remarkable. And if the US is going to remain competitive in certain sectors of manufacturing, then we need to do the same kinds of things that we've seen happen here. And that's this focus on supply chain efficiency. And I think there's a lot that the United States and Europe can learn from that sort of industrial clustering and creating efficiencies due to geography and other things. So I think there's a lot that both sides can learn from each other, but that's one thing that I would like the US side to learn from China.